newfangled, or do you have a call, Chris?
We have a caller, Al.
All right.
It's an old friend as well. We have Tan on the line.
Ton, really? Oh, how fantastic. All right, Molly, we're holding off a little on the Bernstein poem for a second. We're going to bring Ton in. Chris, can you do your magic and bring Ton in?
I think we're good to go. My fingers are crossed. Tan, are you there?
I am there. Can you hear me?
Wow, Ton.
Technological magic.
Totally magical. Totally magical.
Yeah. Science is magic.
Yeah. Please remind us, you prefer they, them pronoun, I think.
They, them, yeah.
Yep. So are you at home in Siberia?
I am, yeah. And I just told Chris that basically the most bizarre thing about this all is that for me, nothing has really changed because I'm a solitary creature and work from home and go outdoors with like basically almost always against my will. So, you know, I'm doing fine. But seeing the world not doing fine is a totally different thing. First of all, thank you very much for doing this podcast because, you know, in the midst of all this madness, it's always very nice to come back to your old friends and actually have a human being who isn't a student to talk to, which is exciting.
So glad you think of us as old friends by now.
Yeah, but I do have a couple of things to say because I was thinking about poetry a lot when the quarantine started and now it continues. And what kind of poetry is relevant right now in a way that it resonates. And I have two examples. One of them is very broad and one of them is very specific and kind of is related to what Davey was actually saying. Because the first thing is I came back to Emily Dickinson because she is arguably, in my mind at least, the queen of isolation. Mm-hmm. And she was totally fine being isolated, I guess, at least from her poems. There is a certain like wistfulness about being in solitude, but also a lot of just acceptance and almost relishing in it.
Yes.
There's a lot about death and blood, but also about resilience and about just kind of like watching from the outside, looking in, which is how I feel like we all feel from time to time.
Yeah.
And so when I was in Vienna, which is, you know, where I actually called you from last time, I picked up this beautiful edition of Emily Dickinson's selected poems that is like all beautiful and golden and embossed and all of that because I'm aesthetic trash TM. And I couldn't live without it, obviously. And so I've been reading it and it's been a great source of comfort. However, because everything that is going on, and I know that a lot of people are in danger, a lot of people are potentially in danger, all people from my family are in risk group, all of us. And my mother has to still go to the office. But that's terrifying. And something that I noticed is I kept coming back to Bob Perlman's poem, Chronic Meanings. Mm-hmm. Because in the midst of it all, there's so much grief and there's so much loss and there's so much just like unfairness and confusion, and all of it is basically out of your control because yeah, you can do your part, but what can you do other than that, right? What can you do other than just sitting at home and watching people, you know, potentially suffer? And I think it really does resonate with what Davey was just saying, because it is language being squeezed. Mm-hmm. It is a poem that uses just 5 words in a sentence, right? And those sentences are incomplete, and that is why it works. And our lives right now are incomplete. Mm-hmm. I mean, for me, nothing's changed, but for my students, when I talk to them, they don't know how to work from home. They don't know how to talk to people. They don't know how to communicate with their family so it's not overwhelming or lonely. And they don't have the vocabulary to do that. But also when someone passes away or when someone goes to the hospital or when someone is denied treatment, you also don't know what to do with it. There are no realistic words in the English language or any other language for that matter to really describe what's going on. And there is one part in the poem that I like specifically, I think, in this particular time, where he says, not enough time to thoroughly structure announces structure and takes, he caught his breath in. For some reason, that really hits me, and that really hits me right now specifically. So that has been very relevant and weirdly both painful and comforting.
Ton, it's almost as if you knew what our prompt was. You're really like a natural TA. Appreciate what you just said. I want to invite Gabe and Lily to each comment very briefly on anything that Ton just said. And Ton, you can, why don't you hold on? We'll give you a final word in a second, and then we'll turn to Molly. Sure. Gabe, what are your thoughts about what Ton just said?
Ton, thank you for calling in. I just wanted to say, I mean, I think the Bob Perlman poem is a good example, and I think there's many others in ModPo, but poetry's relationship to illness is something that people are really working on in academia and poetry, and in a lot of fields. And really, poetry can do something with the experience of living with an illness, with a chronic illness, or with a disability, or in a time of illness that a lot of forms struggle with. And I think like later on, I hope we can talk about some of the other examples. I think Skylar is such a great example for thinking about poetry and disability. I know Davey has talked a lot about this connection here. But I think as we move forward, I just want to kind of emphasize that poetry is able to really handle the differences that illness brings into life in an elegant, humane, and really cognitively quite demanding way. So
thank you, Gabe. That was stunning. That was great. Lily, a quick response to Ton?
I'm thinking a lot about the difference between choosing an isolation or like looking at your options in the world and choosing isolation, a la Dickinson, maybe saying like, the best reaction I have right now to my circumstances is to work on my poetry, be on my own, versus this horrible thing that is happening to us, and we're all working to process it, but that poetry has been the form that consistently is the place to go to process those two like very difficult circumstances that might result in the same or might similarly result in isolation, but from like really different reasons. But that poetry can be wide enough to like hold, to be the space where you go to work out what you need to process from those two different, really two really different circumstances.
Thank you, Lily. Ton, we're going to say goodbye. Do you want to get a last thought in?
Yeah, I think that it's interesting, specifically about what Lily said, that some of us, I think there is a weird dichotomy about, on one hand, for some of us, like in my situation, for example, being fine with being alone and being confined and not finding it stressing at all. And for some of us, seeing it more as an additional stress and then as an additional trauma, really. And something that I've been thinking about while, listening to your responses is just how important poetry is in that time. So I wanted to shout out one person who honestly kept me going and keeping me sane a little bit on some days when that was a very questionable decision whether I was going to be sane that day or not. And, like right now, all of the sports events are canceled. Everything's canceled. Life is not what it used to be. And there is this one athlete. She's a figure skater, and she's also a writer and a poet. And her name is Karina Manta. And what she does right now is she posts new poems of all the authors she admires and loves and finds, inspirational one way or another that speak to her in her like Instagram stories. And so every day when I wake up, I go to those stories. I find new writing. I find new poems. I read them. I feel my feelings, and I get on with my day.
Great.
And this is how I've been like surviving for these 2 months.
And what is her Instagram handle?
Karina Manta.
Great. Ton, thank you for calling. And I imagine,
thank you very much, Hal.
we'll see you again at various of these get-togethers, and you'll be joining us maybe in the fall again.
For sure, 100%.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tom. All right, everybody.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye, Tom.